right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with my very good friend in real life, best-selling author and founder of A21, Caine. Christine, thanks for being here.
Hey, Christy, I'm pumped. Any excuse to talk to you.
Well, one of the things that I love having you on the show, and you and I, we joked about this, but we could talk about anything. And I love watching your heart for building faith in people, and I've watched you do that. I've heard you give sermons on a variety of passages of scripture, or a variety of topics and aspects, but there is a common thread in everything that you do, and it's this thread of faith. I just really want to talk to you specifically about this new book, How Did I Get Here? Because I know that faith is such a piece of what you do. It's the foundation so much of what you do, and this message of people getting off track, of people wandering, of people feeling lost or stuck or far from God is something that is so timely. Tell me, first of all, what's the backstory of this book that really lit a fire in you to want to talk about this specific thing?
I mean, there's a number. Obviously, what's happening in our world today. I mean, you know, Christy, one thing my dad told me, my dad used to take us swimming up in the north coast of Australia, my mum and dad. And they took us to this place that had this really big undertow, like a really bad rip. And they would always put a big beach umbrella up one end of the beach and, you know, some beach towels on the other end. And they would always say to us, kids, when you go out, make sure you check these markers really regularly. Look up and check your markers, because if you don't, you're not going to realize it. You're going to be having so much fun. Life's going to be awesome. You're out there swimming, but you will end up drifting out to sea because of the undertow, whether you feel it or not. And then my dad used to always say, kids, remember, all you have to do to drift is nothing. And he used to say that phrase, and it just really got into me that any of us have to do to drift, whether it's in our faith, in our marriages, in our friendships, in our businesses. I mean, you go to any sphere of life, you don't even have to do something really bad to drift. Do nothing. And it's as much what you don't do as what you do that will cause you to get off track in life. And so often we think drifting is that people have these really intentional things, and I'm going to get up, do something and walk away. But in my case, it wasn't that kind of drift. I had what I call like a perfect storm. And, I had my 50th birthday. It was 2016. And I had I went out, celebrated, had a ball, came back and had 26 missed phone calls on my phone from my brother in Australia to tell me my mum had died that night. So I'm out having fun, celebrating. You know, it's like life. Best of times, worst of times, all at the same time, you know. In that same time, in a 3-month period, one of my husband's sisters died. My sister-in-law, my brother's wife, died my age. And one of my husband's brother-in-laws died, all our age, all in Australia. So a lot of back and forth for funerals. So there's a lot of grief happening. At the same time, because normally this is how things happen, all at the same time, a very close friend of mine, I felt, really betrayed me. I just didn't see it coming the way and betrayals can come in lots of different ways, but I didn't see it coming. There's a scripture in the Bible that says it would have been easy if it was my enemy that was against me. But when it was my friend that I used to go to, it just changes everything when it's someone that's really close to you. And then, I don't know if you remember, Christy, 2016 was a bit of a volatile time, 2017, especially living here in North America. There was just so much going on in every sphere of life. And if you're any kind of public figure, you may as well have a target on your head. I remember I woke up every morning saying to my husband, I don't know who I'm going to disappoint today, because no matter what I say, or if I say nothing, some people are going to think you should be saying something about this. Other people, you shouldn't be saying anything about this. I said, I can't win. You know, you just kind of feel like, are you kidding me? Right. Suddenly everyone wanted me to be a world expert on every political issue, immigration issue. I mean, I'm not an expert. I just want to tell people you can do it, you know, and suddenly so there was a lot of factors. I mean, I'm laughing now, but it was intense, let me just say, at the time. And there was one night I came home. Nick was watching a show on the Navy SEALs called Hell Week, you know, just about that Hell Week to become a SEAL. And the whole goal, man, is that they break you down mentally, physically, emotionally. So you ring the bell and go, I'm tapping out. I'm just not going to be a SEAL. And there was this scene, they dropped the guys out of the helicopter into the ocean, had to swim miles to shore. They hadn't slept or eaten for the week. And I start crying, which, if you know me at all, I'm not going to normally cry out of guys being dropped out of a helicopter. Yeah. My husband's like, Christine, you know, what is up with you? I'm bawling. I said, this is how I feel. I said, I feel like I've always said, like, we are the Navy SEALs, say, in the work that I do. We're rescuing slaves for human trafficking. We're empowering women around the world with Propel. I mean, I've always felt like we're on the front lines. Let's go do it. I said, I feel like the Lord's dropped me out of the helicopter into the ocean, and I have to swim to shore and complete an assignment. And I know I can do it. It's not that I've got the muscle memory, I've got the tenacity. I know I can. And I'm bawling my eyes out, Christy. And I said, but for the first time in 33 years, I don't know if I want to. And those words had never come out of my mouth. Like, I've always thought, I don't know if I can. I'm not smart enough. I've never said, I don't know if I want to. And I was crying and I said, there's so little discernment out there that I've got so much momentum from 30 odd years of all the work that I've done that as long as I don't do anything really stupid, nobody's even going to notice. Like, nobody's going to notice that I've taken my foot off the gas. And I was crying and I said to Nick, nobody would notice. And then I went to him, but Jesus would. And it was that moment when I said, the fact that I got to a point where my drifting was not that, I'm going to go and, leave. It was more, I'm going to take my foot off the gas. I'm not going to be all in like it's too costly to be all in. And I'm in my 50s. I can just cruise based on what I've done. But the decision was, are you going to drift from your purpose, Christine? Because it doesn't mean you have to go do anything bad. It just means you're not going to do everything that you're supposed to do. Yeah. And so there's a subtlety. So for me, and I turned to my husband that night and I went, how did I get here? That was where I go, how did I get here? Like that I, who has always been on the cutting edge, would think, I might just take my foot off the gas and cruise the rest of, play it safe, don't take any risks. All the things I tell everyone else to do, I sort of thought, I'm in my 50s now, I can just chill. So that is the backstory. And then, of course, I'm just seeing in so many cases people like drifting relationally, marriages drifting, just families, and so much happening in the public space that I thought, okay, I think I can speak into that because I know what it feels like to maybe take your foot off the gas, drift from your purpose, even if I didn't drift from like I'm walking out of it totally. So that's kind of the story behind it.
Well, and I'm curious, what comes to mind even as you're talking is I'm thinking there are people listening to this and they're thinking, how do I know if I'm drifting? Like, I'm busy. I've got a family. I've got a career. I've got a business. I'm involved in my church. I'm doing all the right things. I'm checking all the right boxes. I'm not doing anything wrong, to your point. I'm not having these major sins. I'm not having an affair. I'm not stealing from my work. Give us some kind of direction here of like, hey, here's some clues or cues, like just to pay attention, like to check, to get back in line and know if you are, or what that even looks like. How because I imagine people are thinking that. How do I know if I'm drifting?
Sure. And that's what I really unpacked in the 9 chapters in the book, from a faith perspective, going, okay, it's so subtle. So we all know the obvious drift. I mean, you see, someone's posting something on Instagram and they're like, I'm walking out of this, I'm leaving my faith, or I'm leaving my job, or I'm leaving, whatever it might be. That by the time you've done that, the drift already started. I mean, a lot of us are going, oh, how could that person? And I'm like, no, the drifting started way before.
Right.
It's just that now they're out to sea. They didn't check. So we, especially in this time, Christy, where things are so volatile in every sphere of life, if we are not checking our markers every single day, whether we realize it or not, we will drift, because the currents of society have changed, even in the last 3 years, from what society was like to what it is now, morally, ethically, sociologically, environmentally. I mean, every realm of life, you're like, politically, you're just like, what has happened? Everyone feels like they've got whiplash because the currents have shifted. So we go, what are my markers that I need to check? And I've written some down. I said, it's when you stop trusting and you start controlling. So it's an inner anxiety where you're no longer truly trusting the plan of God to unfold in your life, man. You are going to start controlling everything. You go, you know what, God, I think I could do a better job than you. And you don't realize, and I've certainly unpacked, what does that look like? Because it looks different for everyone. But it's like, where am I truly not trusting God with my future? Where am I trying to control the outcome? Whether it's with my kids, my marriage, my friendships, my job, whatever it might be, there's a fine line. And if you go from trust to control, you are going to burn out. You're going to drift, because none of us can sustain a supernatural purpose in our own strength. We actually really can't. Another one I wrote was, when you stop healing, you've drifted when you stop healing and you start seeping. I think a lot of what we're seeing out there in the public sphere, especially on social media, is a lot of people just seeping out of their woundedness. So the bitterness and the anger and the unforgiveness, and you see so much divisiveness and chaos, and you go, what is happening? And it's, we are no longer going to God for healing. We're kind of justifying our brokenness and just kind of seeping off right around. I mean, it starts in your home with your relationships, but it certainly shows itself, I think, in the public sphere. I've got when there's a whole bunch of different ones, but it's like when you stop praying and you start talking to everyone else. When you are more concerned with talking to everyone else about what's going on than saying, you know what, I'm going to go shut myself in the prayer closet and God and I are going to talk about this stuff. I've got so many, when you just start watching and you stop working. And what I mean by that is, like, you're no longer in the field. You get up in the grandstands. And at the moment, when you look at things out there, there's a lot of critics. I mean, critics are great in the grandstands. I mean, no critic on television that's a critic of a game or a movie they're not acting in it, or they're not playing in the football field, man. Their whole job is professionally to critique the people that are doing it. And I'm like, you've drifted when you're no longer running in your lane, but boy, you've got opinions about how everybody else should be running in their lane. So I think there's like subtle signs.
Yeah, even as you were talking, that first example of you stop trusting and you start controlling, man, that just hits home with me, because I feel like one of the things that I've always so closely identified is in Genesis, in the garden, when the serpent says, "Did God really say?" Yeah. And it's just seed of doubt where Eve's like, "I got this. I can take matters into my own hands." And that is my Achilles heel every single step of my journey in my life. You'd think I'd stop falling for it, Christine, and I don't. I'm like, oh, I got this. I can do this better. I have better plans. I'm a doer. I can make things happen. And I just love that reminder, because even that first one, I was like, yeah, because God will often show me just enough light for the next step, but I want to take 20 steps in advance. And he doesn't show me that. He just shows me what's right in front of me. I've used the seminary example, but I've even told people really honestly, I don't know what God's going to do with this. I just know that today I'm supposed to be in this class, and that's as far as I can see. But if we're not careful, we want to take matters into our own hands. It's that whisper, again, from the enemy of going, did God really say? Planting that doubt that's eroding the trust that drives us to control, and ultimately that is going to lead to disappointment. I love even just that first one. I was like, yeah, man, that hits home with me. Christine, I know you walk through this whole framework in the book and people are listening, but what I love most about, even as you talk about the heart behind it, this book, it's not for someone that's just has these major sins. It's not for this person that's like completely fallen off the wagon. They've abandoned the faith. This is for any of us that are drifting. That visual of the example on the beach, I'm like, ooh, we're all guilty of that, of just not swimming, not doing anything, and letting the current pull us.
And in this particular time, I mean, we've come through just so much upheaval in the last 5 years here for the people that are watching from America, but the whole planet, no matter where you're watching this from, the last 18 months, everything has so dramatically shifted. And people, everyone, you're kind of feeling what is going on. The world is not the world that we once knew, and it won't be again. So you've got to have some markers. And the tendency now, and I think the biggest lie of the enemy, is to make us all pull back. And the purpose of God for our lives hasn't changed just because the world has changed. So our thing is now, do I continue to press on and say, I'm 55 now. So what I decided to do during the pandemic was, like, I climbed every mountain in Southern California, because I'm like, since I cannot get on a plane and go overseas, I'm not pulling back. I had to find my whole physicality, my whole body had to do something to go, don't pull back and don't stop. Now, of course, things get rearranged in your life, but that sense, the enemy, if he can't get you, he's going to try to get your purpose, because on the other side of you fulfilling your purpose is all the people that you're going to impact. So if he can just get you to chill out, doesn't have to get you to do anything really bad, but just pause, stop, slow down. And people are always saying to me, Chris, it's what you said, your message is a faith message. Well, I love that, because the Bible says that without faith, it's impossible to please God. But a lack of faith is that I would stop prematurely and just live a comfortable life, because I could think, well, I've done a lot of good things. People are going to say nice things about me. This is like, that's all great. But that's not what God called me to. So the fight of faith in our life to the very end, Paul says, I have run my race and finished my course. So for me, I'm a bit older than you, the finish line is closer than the starting line. So you're more motivated in your 20s and 30s. Your life is before you. You're like, come on, I want to go change the world. And I've got time to do it. At my stage of life, you normally get to one of two things, either regret, like, wow, women feel like I've wasted my life, I should have done more. And I want to inspire them and go, it's never too late.
Right.
You have never drifted too far from the purpose of God. So I want those women to be motivated. And you spend so much of your life doing that too. Come on, your second half can be your best half if you want it to be. But the other temptation is comfort, security of just like, well, I've worked hard. I've gone hard in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and I'm going to eat the fruit of my labors, which is a good thing. I have no problem with anyone doing that, but it's not like settling is different to enjoying the fruitfulness of your life. And I want people, Jesus said, I came that you might have life and life more abundant. So I unapologetically want people to, to flourish in life and thrive. But a part of that is to continue to be a blessing. So when you get to my age, I'm in my mid-50s, and some people will be like, well, don't you think you've done enough? Don't you? Well, that's what people could think. But I've got to go back to God and go, am I done?
Right.
I'm figuring if I was done, I'd be on the other side of eternity. So I figured that the fact that I woke up this morning and there was not a white chalk mark around my body, it meant that God's still got a purpose, God's still got a plan. And then I've got, why do I need to breathe the oxygen if there's nothing for me to do? But the temptation is, if you've had a degree of success too, and I think there's two sides to it, that you would settle for comfort, for convenience, and for security. And at that point, you're no longer in faith. You're just like, kind of like, I'm controlling. My life's really good. And I think for a lot of women, you can get to that place. So for me to go at 55, a kid in college, a sophomore in high school, 25 years married, a successful ministry, and stop and go, here we go again. Okay. Yes, let's be all in again. Let's risk it again because I'm not done. And what the Lord has me on the planet to do. So am I going to drift from my purpose? So not just drift from a morally good lifestyle, but am I going to drift from my purpose?
Well, and I love how you paint the picture too in the book of the cost if you do, like the people that that God wants to use you in their life. And man, it just brings back to front and center the importance of it. And so whether someone is listening to this and they're feeling like, man, I'm realizing I've been drifting because I've been a workaholic, or I've been drifting because I've been a people pleaser doing what everybody else wants me to do, all those critics trying to make them happy in the stands instead of what God has for me, or because I've been drifting because, gosh, I just got kind of comfortable, or maybe I've drifted from the faith because I just feel distant from God. Whatever the kind of different scenarios is, I just love this reminder that you are pulling people back into their purpose. You're bringing it front and center and just realigning their focus on it. And I just think God is going to use that in such a powerful way, Christine. He always does. He always uses you in such a powerful way. And it is just incredible to watch. It's incredible to have a front row seat. You have done such amazing thing with Propel Women, with A21, with all the books that you write and the things that you do. But my thing that I'm just so grateful for is your friendship. So thank you. Thanks for teaching us today. Tell everybody where they can follow you and get a copy of How Did I Get Here?
Oh, I'm on all the things, or mostly Instagram is where I mostly live.
Sure.
But you can find everything on christinecaine.com. And I love you. I thank God for everything that you're doing, Christy.
Oh, you're amazing. Thanks, Christine.